It is the 31st century. Ulysses killed the giant Cyclops.
Listen up, because in 1981, Ulysses 31 wasn't just another space cartoon. This was a French-Japanese co-production that took Homer's Odyssey and launched it into the 31st century.
Energy systems damaged.
What?
Featuring some of the most stunning anime-style animation ever seen on European television, pulling massive ratings across Europe and Japan, and introducing kids to Greek mythology through a science fiction lens that was darker and more philosophical than anything else on Saturday mornings.
Here in the spaceship, time is out of control. Everyone in the Odyssey will die of old age if we remain in this time zone.
The show ran for 26 episodes, aired in over 50 countries, and created a visual and narrative style that influenced European animation for decades. It featured gods as cosmic entities, genuine existential stakes, and serialized storytelling, where the heroes were literally cursed by the gods and searching for a way home.
We will consider your proposal, Kronos. You will have a reply soon.
You fool. And you had the nerve to call me naive.
But here's the thing. Only 26 episodes were ever made despite international success and ongoing demand. So what the hell happened? How did one of the most ambitious animated series of the early 1980s fail to get a second season? And why has it been largely forgotten outside Europe? How France and Japan created something unprecedented. Alright, so here's something most people don't realize. Ulysses 31 exists because French television wanted to create animated content that could compete with American imports, and they figured out that partnering with Japanese animation studios was the key. In the late 1970s, French television was dominated by imported American cartoons, Hanna-Barbera shows, Disney content, Saturday morning stuff dubbed into French. French animation studios couldn't compete on budget or production scale. They needed a different approach. Enter Jean Chalopin, the same producer who'd later create Inspector Gadget. In 1978, he founded DIC Entertainment with the explicit goal of creating international co-productions that could sell worldwide. His strategy was brilliant. Partner with Japanese animation studios to get high-quality animation at reasonable costs, then sell the resulting shows to multiple territories to recoup investment. For Ulysses 31, DIC partnered with Tokyo Movie Shinsha, one of Japan's premier animation studios. TMS had done work on shows like Lupin III and would later produce Inspector Gadget's animation. They were experts at cinematic, theatrical quality television animation.
No one escapes from Kronos that easily. Not even the children of Ulysses.
The concept was created by Jean Chalopin and Nina Woolmark. Take Homer's Odyssey and translate it to the 31st century. Ulysses becomes a space captain. The Mediterranean becomes the galaxy. The gods of Olympus become cosmic entities with godlike technology. The journey home to Ithaca becomes a journey through space while searching for the kingdom of Hades to break the curse that's put his crew into suspended animation. It was high-concept science fiction mixed with classical mythology, and it was aimed at a slightly older audience than typical Saturday morning fare. This wasn't slapstick comedy. This was serious science fiction adventure with genuine philosophical weight. The production budget was substantial. Estimates put it around $250,000 per episode, which was expensive for European television animation in 1981. But the money showed on screen. The animation quality was gorgeous. Detailed character designs, fluid movement, spectacular space battles, and genuinely alien worlds that looked unlike anything else on TV. The art direction was distinctly European with Japanese execution. The character designs had that European comic book aesthetic, angular, stylized, fashion-forward, but the animation was pure anime, dynamic action, dramatic camera angles, cinematic composition, and the music by Ike Egan and Haim Saban was synthwave before synthwave was a thing. That opening theme with its driving electronic beat and dramatic vocals became iconic across Europe. Ulysses 31 premiered on French television in October 1981 and was an immediate hit. Within months, it was selling to other European markets: Germany, Italy, Spain, UK. The show was dubbed into over a dozen languages, and aired across Europe throughout 1981 and 1982. Japan aired it as well, where it performed respectably, though not spectacularly. Japanese audiences saw it as a curiosity, a European story with Japanese animation. By mid-1982, Ulysses 31 was one of the most successful animated exports in European television. Merchandising followed: toys, books, records. The show had genuine cultural penetration, but there were problems brewing behind the scenes. Problems that would prevent a second season from ever materializing. Mistake number 1. The production was financially unsustainable. Here's the brutal reality that killed Ulysses 31's continuation. The show cost too much money relative to what European television could support. At approximately $250,000 per episode, Ulysses 31 was one of the most expensive animated series being produced for European television. That budget bought amazing quality, but it also meant the show needed extraordinary international sales to break even. The business model relied on pre-selling broadcast rights to multiple territories before production began. French television would commit to buying the show. German television would commit. Spanish, Italian, British broadcasters would all commit. With enough pre-sales, DIC could finance production. For the first 26 episodes, this worked. DIC got enough international commitments to fund production. TMS delivered the animation. The show aired successfully across Europe, but when it came time to finance a second season, the economics got complicated. By 1982, several European broadcasters were experiencing budget constraints. Advertising revenues were down. Public broadcasters were facing government funding cuts, and they'd already aired Ulysses 31 once. Did they want to commit money for a second season when they could just rerun the first season for free? The pre-sale model started falling apart. DIC couldn't get enough international commitments to finance 26 more episodes at $250,000 each. That's $6.5 million, a massive investment that required certainty of return. And unlike American shows that could be sustained by domestic market alone, European shows needed multiple territory sales to be viable. The French market alone couldn't support production costs. Neither could Germany or UK individually. The show needed broad European distribution to work financially. When several key broadcasters declined to commit to a second season, the funding model collapsed. DIC couldn't afford to produce more episodes without pre-sales guaranteeing revenue. The show that had been a creative and rating success was killed by European television economics that couldn't sustain premium animation production. Mistake number 2. The serialized story created syndication problems. Here's the creative decision that made Ulysses 31 difficult to sustain. The show was heavily serialized at a time when most television wanted episodic content. Ulysses 31 told one continuous story across 26 episodes. Ulysses and his crew were cursed by the gods for destroying the Cyclops. His crew was put into suspended animation. His son Telemachus and the alien girl Thais were the only ones left awake besides Ulysses. They had to journey through space, encounter various mythological figures reimagined as aliens and cosmic beings, and eventually find the kingdom of Hades to break the curse and revive the crew. Every episode built on previous episodes, character development carried forward. The journey toward Hades was an ongoing quest. Missing episodes meant missing crucial story beats. This structure worked beautifully for engaged viewers watching week by week in order. It created genuine stakes and emotional investment. Kids were genuinely curious about whether Ulysses would break the curse and save his crew. But it created major problems for syndication and rerun value. Broadcasters who wanted to rerun Ulysses 31 had to air episodes in order for the story to make sense. They couldn't just cherry-pick popular episodes or shuffle the order. That limited scheduling flexibility. And for kids discovering the show mid-run or in reruns, jumping in at episode 15 was confusing. Who are these characters? Why is the crew asleep? What's this curse everyone keeps mentioning? Most successful animated shows of the era were episodic for exactly this reason. Scooby-Doo, Transformers, G.I. Joe, you could watch any episode in any order and understand what was happening. That made them infinitely more valuable for syndication. Ulysses 31's serialization was a creative strength but a business liability. It limited the show's rerun value, which made broadcasters less willing to pay premium prices for broadcast rights, which made funding future seasons financially difficult. The show was too sophisticated for its own commercial good. Mistake number 3. The American market completely rejected it. This is the factor that killed any hope of second season financing. Ulysses 31 completely failed to break into the American market, and without American sales, the economics didn't work. The American television market in the early 1980s was the biggest and most lucrative in the world. A successful show in America could generate more revenue than success in all of Europe combined. For international co-productions, American sales were the holy grail. DIC desperately wanted to sell Ulysses 31 to American networks. They pitched CBS, NBC, ABC, all the major broadcasters. They tried syndication distributors, and everyone passed. American broadcasters saw several problems with Ulysses 31. First, it was too dark and philosophical for American Saturday morning standards. The show dealt with death, divine punishment, existential searching. American networks wanted lighter, more comedic content. Second, the anime-influenced animation style looked foreign. American audiences in 1981 weren't familiar with anime aesthetics. The character designs, the dramatic visual style, it all looked weird and off-putting to American network executives. Third, the serialized storytelling was a non-starter. American Saturday morning programming was rigidly episodic. Networks wanted shows that kids could watch in any order. Ulysses 31's continuity-heavy structure violated that requirement. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, there was no toy line. American animation in the early 80s was increasingly dominated by toy commercial shows. These shows existed to sell toys, and toy sales funded production. Ulysses 31 had no toy partner. There were some European toys produced, but nothing at the scale of American toy lines. Without toy revenue, the show needed strong broadcast sales to be profitable. And American broadcasters weren't buying. The failure to break into America meant DIC couldn't access the revenue stream that could have sustained production indefinitely. European sales alone weren't enough. By late 1982, with no American deal and declining European broadcaster interest in second season financing, Ulysses 31's fate was sealed. No second season would be produced. Beloved in Europe, unknown in America. Here's what makes Ulysses 31's legacy fascinating. It's a cultural phenomenon in Europe that barely exists in American consciousness. If you grew up in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, or the UK in the 1980s, Ulysses 31 was a formative childhood experience. The show was rerun constantly throughout the 80s and 90s. Multiple generations discovered it. The opening theme is instantly recognizable. The visual style influenced European comic artists and animators for decades. In France particularly, Ulysses 31 is considered a classic of French television animation. It's referenced in pop culture, parodied, celebrated. The show represents a brief moment when French television animation competed internationally at the highest levels. In Japan, it's remembered as an interesting curiosity, a European story animated by Japanese studios, an example of early international co-production that would become more common later. But in America, virtually unknown. Most American animation fans have never heard of Ulysses 31. It never aired on American television. It wasn't available on home video in the US until the 2000s. It exists in this weird blind spot where it's simultaneously a beloved classic and completely obscure, depending on where you're from. There have been occasional attempts to introduce Ulysses 31 to American audiences. In the 2000s, it aired briefly on some cable networks. Streaming services have made it more accessible, but it's never achieved the cult status in America that it has in Europe. The show represents this parallel universe of animation history where different markets value completely different things, when artistic ambition meets market reality. So here's the thing about Ulysses 31. It was exactly the kind of ambitious, sophisticated, beautifully produced animated series that should have sustained itself for multiple seasons. It had international success. It had critical acclaim. It had passionate fan bases across multiple countries. The creative team wanted to continue. Fans wanted more episodes. The story wasn't finished. The first season ends with Ulysses still searching for Hades, and the curse still active. But the business model couldn't support continuation. European television economics couldn't sustain the production costs. American rejection meant losing the largest potential revenue stream. The serialized structure limited syndication value. Ulysses 31 failed not because it was bad, but because it was too good for the television ecosystem of 1981. It was premium animation with sophisticated storytelling in an era when television wanted cheap episodic content that could be endlessly reshuffled. The show proved that French-Japanese co-production could create world-class animation. It proved that serialized science fiction could work for kids. It proved that adapting classical literature for animation could be commercially viable. But it couldn't prove that any of this was financially sustainable without American market access or toy revenue. And without sustainability, even success gets canceled. So that's the rise and fall of Ulysses 31, a French-Japanese co-production that created some of the most beautiful and sophisticated science fiction animation of the early 1980s that became a cultural touchstone across Europe, and that was killed after one season because television economics couldn't support its ambition. It's a story about how artistic success doesn't guarantee commercial sustainability, about how market fragmentation across territories creates funding challenges, about how sometimes being too sophisticated and serialized prevents long-term viability. Ulysses 31 proved that animation could be art. Then it proved that art doesn't always get renewed. The 26 episodes exist as a complete story arc that European fans treasure and American fans have mostly never seen. And that split existence defines its entire legacy. If you grew up in Europe and have the Ulysses 31 theme song burned into your brain, you're my people. Drop a comment and tell me if you were traumatized by how dark this show got, or if you were just there for the cool spaceship. And Americans, if you've actually seen this show, you're in an extremely small club. And if you're not subscribed yet, there's a lot more international animation history where this came from.